Call this public meeting in order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Roll call, please.
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild?
Here.
Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
I would like to make a motion to take from the table resolution number 82 of 2022.
So moved.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to take from the table resolution number 82, 2022. This piece is being taken from the table and placed in seventh order for a final vote. This is a transfer of a liquor license. It had been tabled to allow for a public hearing to be held. On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it and so moved. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, minutes of the Historic Architectural Review Board meeting held May 12, 2022. 3B, minutes of the Historic Architectural Review Board special meeting held June 1, 2022. 3C, Lackawanna County Planning Commission Subdivision and Land Development Evaluation Report reviewed May 11, 2022. 3D, minutes of the Scranton Firefighters Pension Commission meeting held May 18, 2022. 3E, minutes of the Non-Uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held May 18, 2022. 3F, agenda for the Non-Uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held June 15, 2022. 3G, minutes of the Composite Pension Board meeting held May 18, 2022. 3H, Controller's Report for the month ending May 31, 2022.
Are there any comments on any of the third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
First on the list is Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, Scranton. What is the update on the union contract negotiations?
Negotiations are still ongoing.
I saw the controller's report for the month of May and noted that there had been no payments to Ufberg and Associates, even though they have had meetings in April, May, and June, so that expenses continues to accrue. That'll be interesting to see what they get, since they've already racked up $171,601.07. Let's see, the 2021 audit, is that progressing well?
Yes, we have to ask for an update on the June 20th deadline that they gave us.
Well, I remember last week you said that they're projecting a September 30th completion date. We'll see if they make it this year.
And they gave us a list of two with separate items on when they needed by June 20th and one when they needed by August 1st to achieve that date.
Yeah, I'd love to see the engagement letter. There should be some kind of penalty if they miss the completion date. If during fifth order, I would be interested to hear if we have any answers to the letter sent in by Lazar and McGovern with regard to the payroll preparation tax. They raised some very interesting questions, and we're headlong into that new process, aren't we? So I think we ought to have some answers to that about what we're doing with the self-employed and rental income, and that should be coming pretty quickly. One thing I was thinking about all day today, I looked at the October 2021 Act 47 coordinator's recommendations when we were coming out of distress status, where Jerry Cross recommended we come out on January. And he was projecting a small operational deficit in 2023, followed by increasing operational deficits in 24, 25, and 26, because as he saw it, expenses were going to exceed revenues. Now, when he wrote this document in late 2021, he didn't know about 8.6% inflation. He didn't know that we would not have negotiated contracts for our 3 largest unions. He didn't know about the war in Ukraine. And he didn't know that the county would have approved reassessment. So I think that as we approach the budget process for 2023, and if we ever get someone hired to help us navigate out of distress status, I understand we're still waiting on our grant to be approved, I would love to see a public caucus with the administration down here and having them comment and how these issues are going to factor into the 2023 operational budget. Because I think that expenses are going to far exceed revenues next year. Just take the union contracts. The unions, if they get more in terms of a pay raise than was anticipated, that's a legacy cost that goes forward forever. And then you're going to have inflation affecting utilities, other contracts, a whole lot of things. So I would like to see some really hard, realistic projections of expenses for next year. Because it's not so easy just to raise taxes or let's take out a 30-year bond. We need to do some hard thinking because we're in tough economic times. And just because we came out of distress status doesn't mean that we aren't on the thin edge and can slide back in. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, John Thomas.
Good evening, Council. My name is John Lloyd Thomas. I'm 75 years old, a lifelong city resident. I'm currently living in Geneva House on Adams Avenue, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with a bar called Levels on Linden Street. They play music. I live in the back of the building. Their music mostly is in the back of their building. I'm only a few feet away from them. They play music from 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon till 3 and 4 in the morning, almost nonstop. Occasionally, they might start at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes later. 6 days a week. Now, I love music, but is there something that could be done that they could stop playing music at 11 o'clock at night? They have several hours to play it.
There are city.
Is anybody, I'm asking anybody on council.
So there are city ordinances. Have you ever called in either the police department or licensing inspection to complain?
Okay, Mr. Donahue, I forgot to mention. Pardon?
I'm just asking if you've ever called to.
Okay, I forgot to mention this. I called the police department Saturday night about 7:30 in the evening. They sent an officer up. They paid no attention to it. They just kept on playing at 3 or 4 in the morning.
So at 7:30 at night, I believe the city ordinances allow that, but it's...
That's when I called the officer, and he went up about 8 o'clock.
Yeah, but
And
it-
asked him to stop playing till 11.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe the city ordinance says after 10, for sound. Is it 10 during the week, 11 on weekends?
10:30, 11 is the ordinance?
It's 10 during the week, 11 on weekends.
Well, I wish somebody could help me out, because,
We'll have
I
our...
mean, 3, 4 in
Yeah.
the morning, that's a lot to take.
We'll have our city clerk send something over, and if you want to leave contact information, we'll send you along what we get back.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You could
You
leave...
have a good evening.
Thank you. Please leave your contact information with Allison there, and we'll get back to you with what we hear back.
Good evening, Council. Les Spindler, city resident, homeowner, taxpayer. 7D. I'm against that resolution. You want to hire Nassauben LP $4,000 a month over 2 years to help lobby for federal infrastructure and other funding. Can't that be done by somebody in the city? Why do we have to pay people to do work that somebody in the city should be doing? That's how we got in trouble over in the Doherty administration. They hired people that we didn't even need. Consultants after consultants, and this is the same thing. Why can't the mayor do this, or the BA? Somebody should be able to do this instead of throwing out money. Like I said, like Joan would say, we just got out of, I don't know. It's ridiculous. Anyway, I think you should vote against that. Next thing, it's coming up on the end of June, and I've yet to see a street sweeper in Tripp Park. Usually it's there like in April, probably latest May. So far, like I said, we're almost at the end of June. I've yet to see one. At least on the blocks around where I live, anyway. I haven't seen one ever. Next thing, I neglected to bring this up last week. It was back in the fall, I was promised to have our corner fixed, all the curbs, and by the supervisor. And now, like I said, we're almost at the end of June, and I've yet to see anybody up there. So I'm hoping it's the corner of Bulwer and North Rebecca. So I hope they get up there soon before the cold weather starts. While I'm talking about DPW, years ago I used to have coal heat, so I needed ash cans to get my ashes out. Got rid of the coal heat years ago, but I still have my ash cans, which I use for yard work, to throw in grass clippings and bushes I trim. Last couple weeks, I lost 2 ash cans. The garbage men are taking them. They're old, and some of them have a little hole in them, but I think the city owes me 2 ash cans. They shouldn't have taken those cans. They should have just... Oh, and this is a new crew. I've used those ash cans for years for the same reason, and they've never disappeared. Now we got a new crew. The 2 other guys went to other jobs in the city, and my 2 ash cans disappeared. So I think they owe me 2 containers. Lastly, last week I talked about Boozy Bees. Well, I went there Friday on the first day, and I thought it was awesome. They had a really good crowd. I was there about 8:30 Friday night, and it was really busy. I wished them well. It was really, really good. I've never had anything like that before. It was really, really good. And I advise everybody to go at least try it. I'm giving them a nice plug here. And you can't take it out. It's just they just have to put a lid on it. So people can't take it out if you want to. But I ate mine there. And they have a black wall. Then they had markers, you could write something on the wall. I was really impressed by it. So I hope they do well. We need small businesses like that to make it in the city. And I will be there again, probably pretty often. I really liked it. So, thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you. Someone signed the sign-in sheet next, and I can't make out what the name is. Before Mr. Raines.
Let me see. That's an L.
There's an L there.
I think that's an L. I think that's you, Lee.
That's probably me. I scribble. Good evening, council. The first thing I have here today, I think, is pretty important in regard to all the residents of the city, considering what took place in Texas with the loss of those children. And I think the city of Scranton really needs to rethink security for the public school system. Only, I think it needs to not send Scranton police officers into the Scranton School District. I think the Scranton School District needs to create its own security force of veterans, combat veterans as a matter of fact, who are willing to use the weapons they have to protect the children in this district. Hopefully that will never happen in Scranton, but I'm sure that the people in Texas thought that they'd never have the problem they have either, and as they research this, they find out that they had a ballistic shield 3 minutes after the whole thing started, and that the children were basically executed in that school as the police officers stood outside and waited. And I just think that it's one thing to be a policeman, and I respect policemen, but I think that sometimes we're all born with something that wants us not to do harm to other people, and sometimes there isn't time to hesitate. So you need somebody who is actually experienced trying to actually do harm to people, people who have been in combat, who won't think twice about doing what has to be done to protect those children in that school district. And it might sound like a very silly thing to say at a council meeting, but maybe somebody should ask somebody how they feel if they've lost one of their children and the effect that has on them, not just for today, but for the rest of their life. And not only that, I don't know how that community is ever going to bounce back, because they've just taken such a hit, it's beyond belief. And I'm not blaming the police, because I don't think they were ever prepared to really go in there, because I think policing and taking on an active shooter are two different things, especially with the way that whole thing went down. And the other thing I have here today is, you know, I hope, well, first I'll start by saying, I'm going to give you my phone number. It's 570-558-1648. And a couple of people have responded to, you know, working together to put the Home Rule Charter on the ballot. But it just doesn't have to do with Scranton's Home Rule Charter. It has to do also with the county, because both of them have to go together, not just the city. Now, I really think it's time for Scranton and the surrounding community to realize one thing that I believe to be true. But of course, a group would have to come together and agree that this was the way to proceed. I think the Scranton Police Department, I think the Scranton Fire Department should be cast in a new role as a regional fire department and a regional police force, because I think that Scranton has trained professionals that can help to create a county-wide police and fire department to work for all the communities located in Lackawanna County, because there's a lot of people and a lot of communities that have no police protection and no fire protection, and the cost of that could be spread across the whole county and make it affordable. And I also believe that Scranton needs help in the cost in regards to its pension plans. It's just something, fire and police protection is very expensive, and it's something that everyone needs, not just the people in Scranton, but everybody in the whole county. And if we can't bring our elected officials together to regionalize law enforcement and fire protection, then the residents themselves have to sit down and find a way to write a charter to make it happen. Because I just think, as a citizen of the county and really of the country, everybody deserves those protections. And hopefully somebody will call, 570-558-1648. I'd really like young people to get involved because I'm 63 and most of the people are old, and I just think we have to build continuity for a future of this community, and I think the young people hold the key moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list, Derek Rains.
You don't have to call me sir. Mr. Rains is fine. There you go. Am I here at the microphone? Yes. Okay. I'm going to start my clock on here so I can see on my reader how much time I have left, so I don't do it like I did last time and just keep rambling, which I do apologize for that last time. Derek Rains, 919 Monroe Avenue, and this wasn't something I planned to talk about, but what the gentleman just talked about, I grew up in Indianapolis, which is now one of the best cities in the United States, and what they did was they took all these counties, Marion County became Indianapolis. They got rid of all of these little cities, all of that waste and everything, and it became one of the best cities in the United States, and I don't understand why we can't do that here. I'm here today, though, to talk about, first off, 2 weeks ago when I was here, we had horrible, horrible rain here. My wife and I were here. We were leaving, and the police, or the fire department, they saw my wife and I trying to get into the van, and the firemen came out and helped us be able to get into the van, which was just wonderful. Which brings up the next thing. Does anybody here know how many handicap how many handicap parking spots are available for this building of this size? 0. There's one on the street, not one ADA compliant parking spot in this whole area. And that is, number one, it's against the law. And there's no reason why this city cannot say, oh, we're going to put in ADA parking spaces, because it's the right thing to do. We're talking about walking and doing all this kind of stuff. How about just take care of the basic stuff? Make our city handicapped accessible. Back to the fire department helping us out. A couple days later, I had an issue with the police department, somewhere I'm not really that familiar with, believe it or not. So we went to the police station, my first time to go in the big police station. I'm in my handicap chair, we pull up, my wife pushes a button, the thing pops out, I get on the beautiful sidewalk, I ride in, and I go up to the front door and I push the button and the door opens up. I go inside and the lady says, oh, can I help you? And I told her I am having an issue with my handicap license plate. And she says, oh, hold on a minute. I'll have a policeman help you. 5 minutes. Policeman's there helping me, signed it. We went right out the door. And what really mystified me the most, if any of you have not been in the police station, the new one on, I think it's South Washington, that is a 100% handicap appliant building. And all these other things that the city has, the city should truly be ashamed of, because it doesn't meet the American with Disabilities Act. And We're talking about doing walking and everything else that we want to do. Why don't we just try to make our city handicapped accessible? Because if you're handicapped accessible, then it's accessible to everybody. And it's just a wonderful thing for me to go to that police station. And my streets, a couple weeks ago when I complained about our streets, they still have not been swept. I rode down to my favorite restaurant, Zuppa di Giorno, 10-minute ride, came back home, took my $37,000 wheelchair up on my porch, and I raised it up, and you would not believe the gravel and the rocks that fell out of my wheelchair. Is it that hard for a city our size to have our streets swept? It's not like it's something that is brand new. And the handicap parking, again, by law, you're required, the closest parking spot into this building is required to be handicapped accessible, and it is required for every so many parking spots, you're required to have van accessible. My van is handicapped accessible. My wife and I had to park in the middle of the road to be able to open up the van. And I think it's a disgrace for the city of Scranton this size not to have these products taken care of. There it is. Thank you so much.
Mr. Range.
Stop. Oh, I forgot to lower this. I hope I did better on my time today. Thank you so much.
You did, thank you. Next on the list is Dave Dobson.
Good evening, Council. Dave Dobson. And on the handicapped issue, there is a parking space designated for handicapped. People don't always seem to respect it, but it should be kept open. It's on the rear of the building, and there's a powered door and a ramp. I don't know about the steepness of the ramp. I'm not sure there. But that end parking spot is handicapped accessible. Actually, you could be ticketed in Pennsylvania. On a Sunday paper, we had an interview of our mayor, and I have stated that I'm not unhappy with our mayor by and large. However, with the idea of attracting people from out of town, we have to resolve this property tax issue with institutional property tax abatements, especially, but my sister and brother-in-law moved up to Long Pond area by the racetrack, and they built a really nice home, and that was in about 1996 or around there, and their property tax was $1,750 a year. That's pretty reasonable for a new house, especially in a really nice development. Well, when everybody came storming in, the property tax went up to $6,000 a year. And then, because of new schools being built and everything to accommodate all these people, and then the 2007, on December, we had a stock market crash started. Well, the neighborhood moved out. They were offered in 2005, I think it was, $450,000 for the house, and it cost them less than $200,000 to build it. And by that time, they probably moved 5 years ago to Florida. They were finally given about a little over $200,000 for the house. So we just have to be careful. These people have to be planned for, and we don't really need somebody coming from out of town and getting a big tax spending spree for their sake and displacing a lot of other people. But hopefully that'll resolve itself, and I probably won't be around to see it anyway. Okay, you know, when you get older, you get a little absent-minded, and last week I forgot to mention the congressional hearings on television. And we're not an island. I appreciate talking about it here. It's not a city issue, it's an everywhere issue. And today, they had people that were election officials, and Speaker of the House in Arizona had his face painted on the side of a panel van as a pedophile because he refused to go along with the big lie. And it's all, another home was invaded. The grandmother of the lady in Georgia that was an election official. People are being harassed, people are being threatened with guns. That's where my Second Amendment ideas end. I don't think you should be running around threatening people with guns, and I certainly hope that these people are offered some witness protection or something. And currently we have a governor candidate that's basically a QAnon supporter. So, you know, if you're a Republican, please consider voting Democrat. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. That exhausts the sign-in sheet for this evening. Excuse me. Would anyone else like to address council?
Hi, my name's Rick Little. I live at 420 Adams High Rise, down the street, Scranton, Pennsylvania. I spoke here before about them confiscating my stuff about 3 years ago. It's still confiscated. I've had all kinds of meetings with all kinds of people and social workers, lawyers, and the district attorney, who is the attorney for my building, but nobody to talk to in my building. I guess it all stems from my income being garnished from another state, New York State, to where I'm living on like $550 a month, and I go in to recertify in like August of 2019, and I questioned them raising my rent like $6 at that time, but I was too busy in Kings County, New York Family Court. My daughter was turning 18, where I found out that there's no appeal of anything after that. That's your life. I haven't seen my child since she was 8. And I got no help from my building because they changed the rules on service, and the building management is just opening up the door, letting in the Lackawanna County Sheriff, who sort of moonlight as process servers. It wasn't like a murder warrant or anything. It was like this lawyer's motion from Kings County, and it really cost my my whole relationship with my child. And I'm in this thing with my building. I went in to recertify, so I was too busy to argue with it then. But then they confiscated my storage space, broke the lock, took it all out, abusively put it in another room, locked that room, and made up a bunch of rules, which is what they do about everything. Major policy changes. And so I'm writing letters. I couldn't get any cooperation from the cashier clerk or the manager. I go to the executive director, and he puts me off, like, make an appointment with my secretary, which I tried to do 5 times. And finally, I just had to write a letter putting on paper, because there's no grievance thing. I mean, I was just asking, can I have a copy of my lease? All these things that are in my lease. And this is one of the biggest problems. In my lease, it says I should get the amenities of the local, county, state, and I don't. I call the police when they burglarized my storage space, and they say, see the manager, which I did, going up the chain. And then I wrote a letter to the executive director. He ignored it for a couple months, and then I wrote a letter to the guy above him, Gary Pecalucci, and that was January 12th, 2020, and I waited 3 months for a response from that, and then I withheld rent, and then COVID came, and then years passed, and then I get slammed with a lawsuit, and I'm finding that everybody in the county, everybody in the city, this includes the police department, the fire department, the code enforcement department, the Lackawanna Pro Bono, the Northeast Penn Legal, they're all on the same team with the landlord. I didn't even get to see my landlord in court. I see David Coyne, the district attorney, and they hire Pat O'Malley, the ex-commissioner in my building. It's crazy, crazy stuff. I need the fire department. I need help with the fire department.
Thank you, sir. I think we have your contact information. I think we did reach out to them, right, Mr. Voldenberg? I don't know if we've received anything back yet.
We did, I believe. Mr. Schuster was involved also. We'll follow up.
Yeah. So
I need some sort of way
once we get something back, we'll pass that along. I believe the last time you were here, you left your contact information.
Like I said last time, it's been up with the mayor's,
yes.
Chris Smith, I believe.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to address council?
Marie Schumacher. First, because nobody did actually say it, I want to remind people that the walkability study is meeting. It's on the website, so anybody who wants to see it can go, but there is a meeting. There's something before it, but the meeting itself starts at 7 o'clock next Monday on the 28th, and it will be over at the former Scranton Central High School in the auditorium there. I'm going to go because I'm anxious to see how friendly or unfriendly they are going to be to vehicles in downtown. Also, I would like to know if we're going to have any walkability studies in any of the neighborhoods.
We're starting in downtown for right now.
And is there a schedule for
So a part of the study is connecting walkability and interconnectivity to all the neighborhoods, but not
within the
necessarily
neighborhoods
in the
themselves?
yet.
I mean, I can walk down my block and I can have beautiful concrete sidewalks that I put in myself, and some other people have as well, and then there's ones that are up, down, there's gravel, there's everything you could want on that block. And I mean, I remember when I was in the 5 years I pushed my mother's wheelchair, you know, we were in and out, and the traffic comes a little fast sometimes, and you know, I think you need to look at the neighborhoods too is the thing. Then what, if any, is the impact of on the union contracts, the police union contract with the police chief on leave?
The police chief isn't on leave.
Not the police, I'm sorry, the police union president.
I don't know.
I mean...
That's a union issue. I'm
well,
not familiar
but
with what...
we're part of the contract, and it's very late as it is.
But we're not involved in in how the union operates. The union operates the way they operate.
But wouldn't it be nice to know if the union has agreed to continue the negotiations, or if they're going to wait till the administrator...
I know they have been continuing to negotiate.
Even since that they went on leave? Okay. Well, that's encouraging.
I don't know if the person you're referring to has been a part of the negotiations, but I know that negotiations with the police department have been ongoing.
Continuing. Okay, well, yeah, I thought automatically that it would be. Then quickly, because I'm running out of time, is item 7D. I do not think we already have representation. We've got a president, we've got 2 senators, we've got rep. I think there's probably only 1 rep left. And I don't see any reason why we are interested in spending $4,000 a month for what we don't know. But if any of you really, truly want to give this an approval, I would ask that you first amend it so that anything that is requested of this lobbyist would be done in writing, and you people would be publishing that in third order, because that's one of the things. The further you get away from this building, the less transparency you have. And so I would ask that you, number one, that you vote against this, and but if you're going to vote for it, please amend it to include that requirement that all the assignments come here or through here. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council?
Tom Coyne, Manuka. I also agree with not having a lobbyist. We're looking at $4,000 a month, which is $48,000 a year, or roughly a little over $23 an hour for a 40-hour position, full-time for the entire year. I think that it's the city's responsibility, and people who are employed in the city, to lobby for their own benefits and to go forward. I have no problem if the city wants to hire someone who is directly responsible to the public, put it on a budget, put it up in a position here that is responsible for doing that, rather than subcontracting it out. When you subcontract out, you get into legal agreements between this company, the lobbyist, and this building. As soon as you get between legal issues in confidentiality, as we've seen from other documents that have been 80% blacked out for anything related to communication, at that point, the lobbyist becomes an independent entity with no ability for the public to oversee it, because their direction will be at the direction of the City of Scranton's legal department, which no one will have access to in the public to see what is going on, because that will be considered confidential legal information. And that is abhorrent to the entire process. It's great that we want to get more money put in by possible lobbying, but contracting it out and stripping away responsibility by being able to hide it behind a legal shield compromises the entire process. I also looked at the property assessment. It's kind of interesting that every time property assessments come up, it is almost always concurrent with the market running into a housing bubble. That all of a sudden cities and communities want to go out at the very top of marketability, low interest rates, and a bubble to baseline the worth of a house based on hyperinflated rates and artificial standards. Not taking a look at it in average, but they want to take a look at the peak of what the house was worth, even after the market collapses, even after we're now at 6-7% interest rate that we're looking at. House values aren't worth what they were worth 2 years ago, even a year ago. This isn't going to be reflected in the assessment because they won't have that information available. So it concerns me that we look for reassessments at the height of profitability, not at actual value for what it was for the community. And last, I know you've had executive meetings on personnel matters and that there have been police out on administrative leave. I'd be interested to know how many officers are out on administrative leave, and what are the officers out on administrative leave for. I'm not asking for names, I'm not asking for who did what, I'm just asking for a breakdown of how many officers out of the department are on leave and what they are on leave for. That is not sensitive information, and that should not be shielded. We should know if there is an administrative issue with our police department, whether it's use of force issues, whether it's in Florida, there was a volunteer officer that worked with the police department who was selling drugs out of his own police vehicle. This should not be hidden, and I understand there is confidentiality for personnel through the contracts, but that should not bar giving a number of how many are out administrative leaves and why they are out administrative leave. That's all that I ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council this evening?
My name is Delmar Gazevich. Currently, I live in Wilkes-Barre, but I work here and I spend a vast majority of my time here.
I'm sorry. If you're not a resident of the city, you can't speak at city council.
This is regarding city matters, however. Is that relevant?
I'm sorry. It's a part of our rules, and we just need to stay consistent with our rules.
All right. I did speak to the mayor on last Tuesday, and she did ask me to come speak here on the meeting regarding this.
If you want to write us a note on what you want to speak to, and if you want to leave your information with Allison, we'll reach out to you too, but we just need to stay consistent with the rules.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Would anyone else like to address council this evening? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A motions.
Mr. King, do you have any motions or comments?
Now, just what we talked about in caucus earlier about the issues with DPW. I think most people experienced late pickup or no pickup with their garbage recently, and that's a serious concern. I spoke to Larry West, the BA, who has been the acting director down there, and spoke to him for quite a long time on Friday, and I think there's a number of issues going on everywhere from, Rubicon. It sounds like they were transferring over to this Rubicon system, and maybe they were short a truck or they weren't running the truck, and maybe some conflicts between management and the actual DPW workers. But I believe that they're working things out at this time. Right now, I think that from what I'm told, they're half a day behind at this stage, and they're hoping to make that up in the next day or two. But I just hope that they can resolve whatever the issues are down there, so that citizens can get their garbage picked up and picked up on time. That's a public health and safety issue, so hopefully they could arrive at a resolution and get this resolved for all the citizens of the city of Scranton. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schuster, do you have any motions or comments?
Yeah, I have two comments. So one, I did get a call from a resident regarding a property in Mr. Voldenberg. The property is at 119 North Cameron Avenue. There's a lot of overgrown grass and other issues there. If we could send that over to code enforcement.
I will, sir.
Thank you. And the other thing is, last week I did ask, I added some questions to Mr. McAndrew's correspondence on Rubicon. The two questions I asked was, does DPW use the Rubicon system daily, and can we get an update on how much money has been saved currently with the use of the system? So I know we haven't gotten an answer yet, but if we could send another correspondence over to see if we can get those answers.
I'll follow up.
All right, thank you. That's all.
Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
Yes, I do. First off, thank you to Ms. Schumacher for the reminder about the walkability study. I was planning on mentioning that in my fifth order comments because I had forgotten during the announcement. But for all those who it might not heard, but just as a reminder, this coming Monday on the 27th from 7 o'clock to 8:30 over at Lackawanna College in the People's Security Bank Theater. That's on 501 Vine Street. There will be a speech from Jeff Speck about the walkability study, which I don't believe I'm able to make, but I wish that I could because I think we'll gain some important information and have some information sharing from the residents at that meeting. But anyone who's able to go, I would encourage you to do so, and I look forward to hearing about it. A few of the other things that I wanted to bring up that I had also mentioned during caucus. First, regarding the Scranton Fire Department, we had sent correspondence to them a few weeks ago asking about firefighters being sent out to other departments outside of the city, and I don't believe we've received a response. So I'd like to ask Mr. Voldenberg to once again send a correspondence, another reminder asking for those previous questions and the details about the policy on that.
I'll follow up with the chief tomorrow morning.
Thank you. And I just want to speak real quick to what Mr. Raines had brought up about handicap accessibility in our city. It is a complaint that I've heard before, so not just being focused on walkability, the people who are able to walk through the city, but for people who do use wheelchairs. I do find that important, and I would like to start conversations with the administration about how we could approach that and what we could do as a city to be more friendly towards wheelchair users or the disabled community, because that's certainly an area for improvement. And I agree we should have a van accessible spot near City Hall. I would love to see that happen. So I'm interested in trying to work on that. It's not something that would happen overnight. I'm sure there are a number of changes that we would need to make, or perhaps a study on how we could become more accessible in that way. But I'm interested in that for sure. And I also wanted to bring up the land bank owned properties in the city. We seem to have an agreement with the county land bank that our DPW would take care of and maintain those properties, the empty vacant lots that we have around the city. Those are not all land bank owned, but the ones that are have not been maintained, and I would like to send correspondence to DPW to ask about a maintenance and a monitoring schedule, because it shouldn't be that we need to harass them and send multiple emails and calls in order to get these properties taken care of. I do understand they have a lot of other things on their plate and what they take care of around the city, but this is an agreement that we have, and I would like to figure out how we could get better in maintaining those properties. There are quite a few that I have a concern about in my neighborhood that I've received multiple complaints on. One of the worst seems to be on Harrison Avenue. I believe it's 525 or 527 Harrison Avenue. That's an empty lot. The weeds and the grass are taller than I am, and I'm 5'3". So that's just shameful that we've let that get to that point. And there was a neighbor who had told me they attempted to bring their mower there to mow it down, but they couldn't because of all the trash that was also there. So this is on Harrison Avenue, where people frequently walk up and down. So if Mr. Voldenberg, if you could please send that correspondence. And lastly, the other thing that I want to mention was about Scranton tomorrow. I'd like to know when they plan on coming in for a caucus, and I'm hopeful that it would be before our August recess. I know many people have been looking forward to an update from them, as well as information about the Pocket Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments?
I have a few. So the first complaint I got, and Mr. Voldenberg, I forwarded you the email, and there was pictures in a separate email. This is the old Scranton School for the Deaf. The property is in disarray with multiple blight issues. It's on the corner of North Washington and Electric Street. So please send correspondence to code enforcement for that one.
That was sent out this afternoon.
Okay. But the person emailed, I said I'd bring it up, so I just want to go on the record as bringing it up. Also, I had a couple concerns and questions regarding CDBG grants, all right, and their criteria. So I'm familiar with the LSAs. I'm kind of familiar with the CDBG grants. They're from HUD and they're federal. But a couple people asked me, they said, you know what, we're not familiar with the criteria. And they said, sure, I'll ask if you can reach out to Mrs. Cipriani and see if their team can put together, say, like a information sheet on CDBG frequently asked questions, or 101 when it comes to seeking them and the criteria thereof. And if they could, put it on the website somewhere so it's visible. I don't think that's a big request, so I said sure. And then also, everybody talked about garbage this week. There's, a soul in Scranton that didn't have a problem with garbage. So last week I asked, please bring Rubicon in, all right, or their principals. First of all, for an update, because, we were told last year it would save us $1 million. Well, it's 6 months. I'd love to see how much money we've saved with this system that I wasn't in favor for, just so you know. So my understanding is, we had some correspondence from the DPW, how do I say, management, most supervisors, because the head is still, was out on leave. But, the information we got was, there's a truck down. No, the truck wasn't down. It wasn't being repaired. It was pulled by management. So when you pull a truck that you're used to running, this is common sense. You're going to get behind on garbage pickup. Why it was done, beyond me. It doesn't make sense, right? So, and the Rubicon, and supposedly they're following the system. They got to follow the system, which is the Rubicon system. So that apparently isn't working either, because I haven't seen garbage left behind like this in 40 years. I've never seen an issue like this before, especially for a week. And I got calls from people that 2 weeks in a row their garbage was picked up 5 days late. It's inexcusable. You know, some people complain about the $300 garbage fee. I don't mind it, because you know what? They come, they pick up my garbage, and pretty much anything I put out, as long as it's done neatly. But to have garbage left behind because of leadership and management for almost 2 weeks is just unacceptable. So we never got a response about when Rubicon's coming in, did we, Mr. Voldenberg?
Not as yet.
All right, please send it again. We're not going away, so I definitely want them in here. And I don't think we even need to ask administration for them to come in. Why don't we just reach out to them ourselves? Can we do that? We gave the administration the courtesy to have them come in, but if they're not going to respond, I'd recommend just contacting them independently and have them come in.
I'll follow up with Mr. West and
All right, well, okay.
contact Rubicon.
Thank you, that's perfect. Also, the traffic study I requested 2 weeks ago, another traffic study with a 30-degree angle. Did we get anything back on that on St. Anne Street for the parking?
Not as yet.
All right, well, circle around for that one. And then, what else do I have here? So, Mr. Spindler, you know, I did hear him before talk about not having his streets clean, and that was probably in March. And then Mr. Raines just had the same issue. So could you please reach out to administration or the appropriate department and ask them, you know, when are the streets getting swept? Have they been? Or some missed? All right. Follow up on them 2 streets, and then see if there's a schedule that we're not aware of. And then also Mr. Raines' concerns about handicap accessible parking out front. I realize there's one in the back. Not everybody realizes it. But you know what? I think his concerns are valid. If we're not in compliance out front, let's fix it. And I know it's a long process, but what normally happens is we'll have committees and it takes a longer period of time. I think just right now, creating one spot in front of the building can be done as soon as possible without much work or conversation, I should say. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just quickly, Mr. Voldenberg, could we reach out to the auditors to see if they received the information they requested by yesterday's due date in the correspondence last week?
I will, Mr. Donahue.
And also, just check with the administration on a bidding timeline. I know you talked to them a couple weeks ago and said they were working on it, but what's the timeline for putting the audit out for bid moving forward? Because this is the last year that the current company is under contract. And that's all I have for this evening. I know, Mr. King, you had something to add.
Yeah, I forgot earlier. I appreciate it. A citizen reached out to me about 1302 Blucher Avenue. The yard seems to be completely overgrown. I just rode by it tonight, and it is. It doesn't look like it's been mowed in quite some time. So if you could just maybe contact the Lips Department or someone, and also the drainage or rain gutter, not rain gutters, the gutters that come down Cherry Street at the corner there of, I think, 1325 Blucher and Cherry Street, that corner. It's kind of like a dead end. So just if DPW, if they can address, like, they're filled with leaves and debris, so it's kind of a drainage issue. I would appreciate that. Thank you. I'll address both, Mr. King.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Schuster, you have something else?
So, to tie this all up, in the past I've made requests of DPW to see if they had a maintenance schedule for drainage basins, especially in East Mountain, West Mountain, to bring Dr. Rothchild and Mr. McAndrew's requests all together. When we send that request, can we see if we have a schedule for maintenance and monitoring for the land bank properties, for the drainage basins in the city, and then for the street sweepers? I know that the street sweepers are supposed to run on a schedule that coincides with the garbage pickup schedule, but to see if we have a maintenance and monitoring for all of those different services, and if we're following the street sweeper schedule that coincides with the garbage schedule.
I will, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Voldenberg?
5B, for introduction, an ordinance, amending an ordinance entitled Approving the Intermunicipal Transfer of a Restaurant Liquor License R15376, currently owned by the estate of George Churkin, Wanda C. Churkin, Administrator, 326 Hill Street, Jessup, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, 18434, to Clarkey's, located 850 Providence Road, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, 18508, as required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. Per the specifications required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, and to reflect the correct legal name of Clarkey's as Clarkey's Billiards, LLC.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C, for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the Federal Emergency Management Agency for up to $7,200,132.16 to be used towards the Kaiser Avenue Stormwater and Pump Station.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I'm glad to see that 5C has been introduced tonight. It's been something that I think has been on the back burner for quite some time. I think FEMA has been waiting for this, so it's good to see that we're starting the process.
Anyone else on the question? I'm also happy to see this on. I know a couple of years ago this goes into, we did the engineering study, and then which allows us then to apply for grants. And to also tie it into 7D, when we apply for these grants, I want to be I want the city to be on the same level playing field in terms of being awarded these grants. These are very competitive grants, and unless we have someone monitoring it every step of the way, the likelihood of being awarded these grants goes down significantly. Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D, for introduction, a resolution ratifying and approving the execution and submission of the grant application by the City of Scranton to the U.S. Department of the Interior's Outdoor Recreation Legacy Partnership Program for up to $381,594 to be used towards the revitalization of Connell Park in South Scranton.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Sixth order, 6A, reading by title, file the council number 14, 2022, establishing a no parking zone along the easterly side of Pittston Avenue, State Route 3023, beginning 100 feet from the northerly curb line of Beach Street and continuing for a distance of 65 feet to allow for safe site distances for a proposed driveway at 819 Pittston Avenue.
You've heard reading by title of item 6A. What is your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I move that item 6A pass reading by title.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
Seventh order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, resolution number 91, 2022, reappointment of Karen A. DeSantis, 1105 Summit Point, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18508, to the Civil Service Commission. This formal reappointment will coincide with the term of Mayor Paige G. Cognetti.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 92, 2022, reappointment of Elizabeth M. Garcia, Esquire, 1135 Olive Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania 18510, to the Civil Service Commission. This formal reappointment will coincide with the term of Mayor Paige G. Cognetti.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7B.
Second?
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7B legally and lawfully adopted.
7C, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 93, 2022, appointment of Walter Barron, 1016 Luke Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania 18510, to the Civil Service Commission, replacing Kevin Morgan, who resigned April 4th, 2022. Mr. Barron's term will be effective upon execution of the within resolution and will expire with the term of Mayor Paige G. Cognetti.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7C.
Second.
On the question, roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7C legally and lawfully adopted.
7D, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for Adoption, Resolution Number 94, 2022, authorizing the Mayor, Office of Economic and Community Development officials, and other appropriate city officials for the City of Scranton to execute and enter into an agreement with Nossaman LLP to provide federal government affairs services.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question,
On the question, I've been talking about this for, Jesus, it's 3 weeks, 3 or 4 weeks. I do not see the need for a lobbyist. Like I stated the past couple of weeks, we have congressmen in our backyard. We have U.S. senators in our backyard. We have another senator in our backyard with adequate staff that can do this job that they're elected to do. We have people in-house that can do this. You can't go on Facebook any day of the week without seeing one of our senators or one of our reps or one of our congressmen awarding money or finding money for different parts of the region. Why can't they do it first now and kick it up a little bit? All right, so for the same reasons, that money could be spent somewhere else besides paying an advocate that's a retired legislator, all right? It's a good gig if you can get it, like I said with the other position, but I'll be voting no, and there are my reasons.
anyone else on the question?
I'd just like to say that ideally, that would be great if our senators and our congressmen and their staffs can really focus and deliver this to us. But it's my understanding, everybody I've talked to, that we really need somebody in there fighting for us, because this is competitive money across the country. There's cities fighting for this funding, and I think, you know, if we $44,000, if we can bring in millions to benefit the city, I think it's a small price to pay. So I'll be voting yes.
Anyone else on the question?
Yes, on the question, I wanted to reiterate my stance on this piece of legislation and just provide my reasoning. So I believe that we need a person who's going to be in D.C. to do this work. We can't hire someone here and then have them, you're going to be paying for travel expenses for them to go back and forth to D.C. I don't think that's manageable. I think it would be much more than the cost of this contract. And it's commonplace to contract out lobbyists. We need someone who's going to be down there fighting for us, for the funds for our city. The congressmen and senators, they have very large districts or the whole state to worry about. Even if they're from Scranton, we're still in competition with Wilkes-Barre or other neighboring cities and towns that are going to be looking for this infrastructure money. This is perhaps once in a lifetime with this bill and the amount of money that they're putting towards infrastructure. And I strongly believe that we need someone who's going to get as much of those funds as they can for our city, because we're desperately in need of infrastructure changes here and across the country, which is why they passed the bill. But that's why I'll be voting for this position. Also, in the backup, in the contract, it does state that they'll be providing regular reports to council, I believe quarterly. So I look forward to receiving those reports and updates on the lobbying activities, and I'm happy to have them in for caucus and for them to be transparent about their work, and I'm hopeful that it'll result in funding for the city. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question?
I just want to say one more thing. So another thing about the $4,000 a month. I don't see anybody going to be hanging out Monday through Friday in Washington, D.C. with related expenses, keeping it under $4,000 a month. I see hidden costs. I don't know anybody can live on that, $1,000, and be in Washington Monday through Friday. I just have a problem with it. I just think we're going to be hit with some costs, and it's not going to produce what we're being sold.
Anyone else on the question?
I've made my opinion known over the last couple of weeks, so I won't repeat it tonight, but I'll also be voting no for 7D.
Just the contract is capped at $4,000 a month. No more can be spent. No more than that can be spent. And you got to think we're talking about a 6.5, give or take, trillion dollar federal budget, and you have cities from all across the country competing for this money. Just the infrastructure money alone would make it worth it, but realistically, if you look at either 5C or 5D, if we were just get one of those grants, the $48,000 a year makes it well worth it. Not even to mention the fact that we're talking about trying to get funding for a train from New York to Scranton, and there's about 30 different municipalities, authorities, counties, just in Pennsylvania, that have to be coordinated in terms of the grant funding they're putting in for that, on top of another 30 to 40 local municipalities in New Jersey that need to be coordinated with that as well. So I think this is well worth it, and I will be in full support of it. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
No.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
No.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7E, previously tabled, resolution number 82, 2022, approving the intermunicipal transfer of a restaurant liquor license R11469, currently owned by Num Noggin LLC and located at 277 Drinker Turnpike, Covington Township, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, 18424, to Base Holdings LLC, located at 820 South Washington Avenue, Unit 4, Scranton, Lackawanna County, Pennsylvania, 18505, as required by the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
I make a motion to amend resolution number 82, 2022 as follows. Whereas a public advertisement was placed in the Scranton Times on June 3rd and June 7th, 2022, and a public hearing will be held on June 14th, 2022, in accordance with the requirements of the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7E as amended.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7E as amended, legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, 8A, filed to council number 9, 2022.
This piece of legislation is the updated zoning ordinance. It's continued to be tabled to allow for additional input, any amendments or any changes. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.